Okay, so that's sort of like the broad protocols. I guess if you have questions about that, let's do questions there, and then we have two sort of brief know your rights situations.
What happens in the instances where ICE does arrest someone without a warrant? Does that invalidate that arrest, or does it like what?
That's a great question. I think that it wouldn't like immediately lead to that person not being detained. Often because, like for example, what ICE will do is they'll have an administrative warrant, which looks slightly different than a warrant signed by a judge, because it's just somebody within the ICE office who signed it. And somebody at their home will say, well, do you have a warrant? And then ICE will show a warrant, but that person won't know that it's the wrong kind of warrant, and they'll open up the door, and then ICE will detain them. So like ICE would say, oh, they opened the door. So like it's perfectly fine, even though ICE was obviously super deceptive in that situation. So I think often like ICE will use whatever tactics they need to use in order to detain somebody, and usually not having a warrant for detention by ICE like isn't strong enough to warrant, no pun intended, like anything different happening in the case. That said, there might be situations where that's true. I think like if ICE didn't have a warrant and they forced somebody's door open, that would be cause for legal action. But I think often people get confused, or ICE will say, yes, I'll have a warrant, and if you let me into your house, I'll show it to you. And then, like, once they're let in, they don't need a warrant.
When you send out this, could you send a picture of what the two warrants are?
I meant to bring those today, but that's a really good reminder. I can definitely do that, because one has a signature at the top, and one has a signature at the bottom, and if you know what they look like, they look very different.
I have it on my phone.
Oh, sure. That sounds great.
So in terms of the difference between asking ICE questions and like providing what could be construed as legal advice to a person, so like it's okay for us to ask probing questions to ICE, but we probably shouldn't be telling the person, ask them for their warrant. We should be instead asking ICE for the warrant ourselves.
Well, you can say you have the right to have a warrant in this arrest, but you shouldn't say like, I'm trying to think of like legal advice that a lawyer would offer, but like I think you can tell people like any sort of know your rights information, which is probably like if you're not an immigration attorney, the level of information that you would have anyway. You like should share that with whoever you're with if they don't already know those sorts of things. But it's more sort of a like telling people like, oh, I think you should go over there, or like, oh, you should like run through this way, or you should like you know, say this to them and not this, or stuff like that. But I think you can tell people like you have the right to ask for a warrant, and like you probably should if that's what happens. If that it's sort of a subtle distinction, but
also like ask to the ICE agent like where you are taking him, like, and they can give you information, and family can find him after, because sometimes it's like people disappear. I mean, in the community, but with them, they know where they are. But that's where, we try to do that, and after we can reach out to people.
You might have mentioned this already. Sorry, does someone have a question?
That's all right.
Oh, wait, sorry, I didn't see. You can go ahead.
I have two questions. One is it more for Rhode Island residents only? Or do you serve southeastern Mass, or what?
we functionally serve southeastern Massachusetts. Yeah, like we generally operate in Rhode Island, but we do have some clients from southeastern Massachusetts.
And my second question was, if you accompany someone to one of their appointments with ICE, are you allowed to go into the ICE office with them? No.
Even no, they don't. It's just like we are like.
Do you wait in like a waiting room?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You just have to wait outside.
No, in the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Oh, in the parking lot?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't even go in the building?
No.
No,
nobody can go. Only people have case, even though it's family, even though it's like kids like for 8 years or 10 years, they stay outside.
Yeah.
If the kids have case as mom, they can go inside. But I think baby, they can allow baby go with their mom. But Yeah, no more people.
You might have mentioned this already, but are the police limited in how they can interact with ICE, like how much they can help them in? I know Providence being a sanctuary city, that means that they limit that, but in other cases, like, or even though they are technically not required to enforce certain actions to support ICE, what else, like, what are other limits that are possible within cities that are sanctuary and cities that aren't?
Yeah.
If there's a difference.
So, I'll just give you my understanding of it, but I can read it like slightly more carefully and send you a clear answer. My understanding is that the CSA in Providence is written such that like police cannot assist in any sort of ICE enforcement. So that means like they could not be deputized as ICE officers. They could not go to an ICE action and like detain somebody for ICE or like act in a way that like was similar to an ICE officer. They also, I think it limits, like they can't, often what police in other cities will do is like they will arrest somebody and then tell ICE immediately that they've like run somebody's information and tell ICE that they have detained somebody who's undocumented. And so they can't do that here. That said, that Rhode Island's a little bit weird because it's small, and so often if people are arrested, they get, like especially if they're arrested close to a weekend or have to be held overnight, they get sent to the ACI because there's not always space in county police departments to hold them. And if that happens, then the ACI, which is in Cranston, can notify ICE of somebody being there. And in general, outside of Providence, the police could notify ICE. That said, the police don't always do that because they don't always have the resources, they don't always care. But ICE could, regardless of whether or not you're in a sanctuary city, can look in, like every day, could look at, you know, who got a traffic ticket, who like was arrested for a minor offense, etc., and like then could go after those people, but they would have to do the proactive work of like looking up people's record as opposed to being notified by the police. I think the most important part of that, like for this sort of situation, is to be really, really aware that if you're watching ICE do something and the police are there, like you should be really paying attention to what the police are doing. Even if you're not in Providence, I think it's useful to understand like how different police departments interact with ICE. That said, like often police will come if there are a lot of people who are not, who don't have immigration concerns, who are like around the ICE action because ICE doesn't have, ICE is a civil enforcement body, and so they can't, like, they couldn't arrest me, for example, if I was recording something happening, but the police could arrest me if I was, if like ICE thought that I was interfering with the action. So that's where it gets a little fuzzy, and like police might be around. It also like might be at a courthouse where there already are police. But if, I guess that I already said, like if there are police, I think just paying attention to whether they seem to be communicating with ICE about how to like best detain somebody, etc. Or if like it's, I guess that's sort of what I would say. I don't know if that makes sense. Again, it's sort of, it's a little tricky.
Yeah.
I don't know,
If they don't mind,
no.
I just got some
Other people have more
I honestly just got some clarification from the ACI today, in that they will honor all ICE warrants
Okay.
automatically. So that's, so if you're at the ACI and there's an ICE warrant, then they will turn you over to ICE. And the other thing, as far as the police go in Providence, as far as I know, there's no punishment possible for an officer who violates that part of the CSA or that part of the thing. Like if they were to call ICE and say, hey, I've got somebody in the back of my car, come pick them up, then there's no punishment that the police can do or the upper echelon can do to that officer for doing that. So it's an interesting, I think that's to do with the contract they have or something like that. So, but it's just an interesting side to that too.
And just talking about this now, in different communities here in Rhode Island, like some organizations don't let police go in the building. Even though like as a friend or something, or my family, I know we have family working, well, I don't have family, but I suppose somebody have family working with the police, but we don't let them in because we don't want them know who is there, what status have people, who is undocumented, who is whatever. We don't want to have like friendly or relationship with police. If it's the rules like saying like, oh, you don't need to connect with ICE, but there's how to say like some people just hate undocumented or hate people, and it's easy to pass information and everything what we are doing, what time we are meeting, we have meeting, or what time we have events, or everything is like, yeah. Is that why we always check with volunteers? Do you have ICE? I mean, do you have family that is working with ICE, like, or with police or stuff like that, just to make sure like who is who. And we know like it's a lot of people have like good intention, but also could be no good at the end. That's on some.
Again, has it down. Oops, it shows the warrant, so now it's there.
Did you have a question? Alright, we can move on to the Know Your Rights stuff if people don't have questions, and then there'll be more space to ask questions after that if you have stuff that's still out.